Welcome back. They say blood is thicker than water. But in the Carter family, that blood was $1 million lie, meticulously woven over 3 decades. I'm Charlotte, a registered nurse who spent my life in the shadows. I gave 2 years of my life to nurse my mother through her final days, only to be rewarded with a trash bag full of my belongings. And an eviction notice from my own childhood home, delivered before my parents' bodies were even cold. The man who threw me out, my brother Alexander, the golden son of the Carter legacy, a real estate developer standing on the brink of bankruptcy, hiding his rot behind a tailored Hugo Boss suit and a Rolex. Beside him stands Vanessa, his trophy wife and a former paralegal. She didn't just marry into the family, she used her legal sharp wit to ensure I was stripped of everything I ever called mine. But there is one thing they didn't count on. I wasn't standing alone. Behind my silence was a secret alliance they never saw coming. It was led by my mother, Elizabeth. To the world, she was a quiet gardener who loved her lavender. But in reality, Mom was a master strategist. For 5 years, she worked with Evelyn Martinez, a fierce estate attorney, to weave a web of justice. My father, William Carter, died clinging to an illusion, never realizing Mom had planted a DNA time bomb in his will. And then there's grandmother Dorothy. At 78, her eyes are sharper than a hawk's. She's the architect of the trap. The trap is about to snap shut. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your location in the comments. I want to see how far my mother's justice has traveled. Stay until the end and don't forget to like and subscribe.
They say blood is thicker than water. But in the Carter family, that blood was $1 million lie, meticulously woven over 3 decades. I'm Charlotte, a registered nurse who spent my life in the shadows. I gave 2 years of my life to nurse my mother through her final days, only to be rewarded with a trash bag full of my belongings and an eviction notice from my own childhood home, delivered before my parents' bodies were even cold. The man who threw me out? My brother, Alexander, the golden son of the Carter legacy. A real estate developer standing on the brink of bankruptcy, hiding his rot behind a tailored Hugo Boss suit and a Rolex. Beside him stands Vanessa, his trophy wife and a former paralegal. She didn't just marry into the family. She used her legal sharp wit to ensure I was stripped of everything I ever called mine. But there is one thing they didn't count on. I wasn't standing alone. Behind my silence was a secret alliance they never saw coming. It was led by my mother, Elizabeth. To the world, she was a quiet gardener who loved her lavender. To Alexander, she was a devoted housewife easily ignored. But in reality, Mom was a master strategist. For 5 years, she worked in the shadows with Evelyn Martinez, a fierce estate attorney, to weave a web of justice that even my father's blind favoritism couldn't tear down. My father, William Carter, died clinging to an illusion of pure bloodlines, never realizing that my mother had planted a DNA time bomb right in the middle of his will. And then there's grandmother Dorothy. At 78, she sits in the corner of the room, her cane in hand and her eyes sharper than a hawk's. She isn't just holding a family heirloom. She is the silent architect who helped Mom build the trap that is about to snap shut. If you're listening to this story from somewhere far away, from a bustling city or a quiet town, drop your location in the comments. I want to see how far my mother's justice has traveled. The rain started during the eulogy. St. Andrew's Episcopal Church in Hartford had the kind of old Connecticut architecture that made everything feel permanent. Stone walls that had witnessed a century of grief. Stained glass windows that threw colored shadows across worn wooden pews. The faint smell of polish and lilies and sorrow. I sat in the front row, my black dress still damp from the walk from the car, tissue clutched in my hand, though I'd stopped crying hours ago. You run out of tears eventually. What you don't run out of is the hollow ache in your chest. The feeling that the world has tilted sideways, and you're the only one who notices. My brother stood at the podium. Alexander looked perfect, as always. Hugo Boss suit, perfectly tailored. Hairstyled just right. The Rolex on his wrist caught the dim church light as he gripped the edges of the podium. He'd been talking for 7 minutes about our father. 7 minutes about Dad's contracting business, Dad's work ethic, Dad's vision for the Carter legacy. He'd mentioned our mother twice. And Elizabeth, his devoted wife, who supported him in everything. That was it. 30 years of marriage, reduced to a subordinate clause. I felt Grandma Dorothy's hand tighten on mine. She sat beside me, 80 years old and barely 5 feet tall, but her grip was iron. When I glanced at her, her eyes were fixed on Alexander with an expression I couldn't quite read. Not grief, something sharper. William Carter believed in tradition, Alexander continued, his voice carrying that particular tone of a man performing emotion rather than feeling it. He believed that family legacy meant something, that the Carter name wasn't just a name, it was a responsibility, a promise to future generations. I wanted to laugh, or scream. I wasn't sure which. Dad had believed in legacy all right, just not mine. When I graduated from nursing school at UConn, Dad didn't come to the ceremony. Business meeting, he'd said. Too important to miss. Mom had come alone, taken 200 photos, hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. When Alexander started his real estate development company 3 years ago, Dad gave him $200,000 in seed money. Just like that. A check, a handshake, a make me proud, son. When I asked for help with my $65,000 in student loans last year, Dad had looked at me over his reading glasses and said, "You made your choice, Charlotte. Nursing school. That was your decision." Like choosing a career in healthcare was somehow a character flaw. The eulogy finally ended. People filed past to offer condolences. Colleagues from Dad's business, neighbors from our street, friends of the family who'd known me since I was small but still somehow looked at me like I was the help. "Your father was such a good man. Your mother was so kind. You must be devastated." I smiled, said thank you, accepted their sympathy while feeling nothing but exhaustion. Mrs. Henderson, our elderly neighbor, pulled me into a hug that smelled like lavender and old perfume. "Your mother's garden was always so beautiful. She loved those lavender plants." "She did," I managed. "You take care of yourself, dear. Your brother will need you now, with the estate and everything." Before I could respond, Alexander was at my elbow. "Charlotte." His voice was low, meant only for me. "We need to talk. About the house." The caskets, Mom's and Dad's, side by side at the front of the church, were barely 10 feet away. The funeral flowers were still fresh. They'd been in the ground less than 3 hours. "Alexander, we haven't even—" "It's important." He glanced around, making sure no one was listening. Vanessa stood by the door, phone in hand, her Instagram-perfect face arranged in an expression of practiced grief. "Dad and I talked about this many times. You know how he felt about these things." My stomach dropped. I knew exactly where this was going. "The house," I said quietly. "The house. The estate. Everything." He straightened his tie. "Hermes," I noticed absently. "You know the tradition, Charlotte. You've always known. Sons inherit. That's how it's always been in the Carter family. That's what Dad wanted." I stared at him. We were standing in a church vestibule, stained glass casting colored shadows across his perfectly styled hair. Our parents not even cold yet, and he was talking about inheritance like it was a business transaction. "The will hasn't been read yet," I said. "The will is just paperwork." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Look, I understand this is hard. I know you've been living there, taking care of Mom during her illness. I appreciate that. I really do." Appreciation. From a man who'd visited our dying mother 3 times in 2 years. "But that was your choice," he continued. "You chose to put your career on hold." "I didn't put my career on hold. I'm a registered nurse. I worked night shifts so I could be with her during the day." "Right. And that was admirable. But it doesn't change the reality of the situation." He lowered his voice further. "Dad made his wishes very clear to me over the years. The house, the business assets, everything. It stays with the Carter men. That's tradition. That's family. I'm family, I said, and hated how small my voice sounded. You know what I mean. For just a second, something flickered across his face. Not quite guilt, not quite pity. Look, I'm not trying to be cruel. I'll give you time to figure things out. Find a place. Get settled. I'm not going to throw you out tomorrow. How generous. He didn't catch the sarcasm. Or maybe he did and just didn't care. I'll give you a week, he said. That's fair, right? 1 week to get your things together. Start looking for an apartment. I can even help you look if you... Alexander? Grandma Dorothy's voice cut through his words like a blade through silk. She'd appeared beside us, barely reaching his shoulder, but somehow taking up all the space in the vestibule. Perhaps we could save this conversation for after we've all had time to grieve? Dorothy. Alexander's smile was tight. Of course. I'm just trying to help Charlotte plan ahead. No one wants this to be drawn out and difficult. No, Grandma said quietly, her eyes fixed on his face. I imagine you don't. There was something in her tone that made Alexander's smile falter. He glanced between us, seemed about to say something else, then thought better of it. We'll talk later, he said to me, then walked back to where Vanessa was waiting by the door. I watched them leave without saying goodbye to anyone. Watched Vanessa lean in and whisper something that made Alexander's jaw tighten. Watched them get into their BMW and drive away while rain hammered against the church windows. Grandma, I said, my voice shaking now that he was gone. What just happened? She took my hand again, the same way she'd been holding it all day. Her skin was paper thin, spotted with age, but her grip was steady. Your mother loved you more than lavender and sunshine, darling, she said. Remember that. It was such a strange thing to say. Such a specific thing. I didn't know then that it was a quote from a letter I hadn't read yet. A letter that would explain everything. 2 days later, I came home from work to find my key didn't work. It was Wednesday evening, just past 7. I'd worked a double shift at Maplewood Senior Living because grief does this thing where it makes you want to be useful, to be needed, to be anything other than alone with your thoughts. Mrs. Rosa had held my hand during my lunch break and told me about losing her own mother 50 years ago. Mr. Patterson had given me an awkward hug and said, "You were a good daughter." I'd held it together. I'd been professional. I'd done my job. And now I was standing in the driveway of 127 Maple Drive, the house where I'd grown up, the house where I'd spent the last 2 years caring for my mother, and my key was turning in a lock that no longer recognized it. I tried again. Maybe the cold had warped something. March in Connecticut could be brutal. But no. The lock had been changed. The deadbolt, too. I stood there for a moment, my nursing bag heavy on my shoulder, trying to process what this meant. Then I walked around to the side of the house, to the garage. That's where I found my life. Cardboard boxes, stacked haphazardly against the garage wall, some tipping precariously. My clothes, my books, Mom's recipe box that she'd given me last Christmas, my framed nursing degree from UConn. Everything I owned, thrown into boxes like garbage waiting to be collected. And because it had rained that afternoon, a cold, miserable rain that matched everything about this week perfectly, 2 of the boxes were soaked through. I could see the water damage on my diploma, the ink running. 6 years of school, of double shifts at a diner to pay tuition, of proving that I could do this without Dad's help, reduced to a warped piece of paper in a wet box. Through the kitchen window, I could see lights on inside. Movement. Vanessa walked past, wine glass in hand, laughing at something on her phone. She saw me standing there in the rain, looking at my ruined belongings. She smiled. actually smiled, lifted her wine glass in a little toast, and walked away. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone. From cold or rage, I wasn't sure which. Alexander answered on the second ring, like he'd been waiting. "Charlotte, you changed the locks. The house is legally mine," he said, not even pretending to apologize. His voice had that edge now, the one that meant he was done being polite. "I had my lawyer verify it this morning. Dad's estate, Dad's house, Dad's decision. I gave you until the end of the week, but Vanessa and I decided it would be easier to make a clean break. You threw my things out in the rain. I had them carefully packed by a moving company. If some boxes got wet, that's unfortunate, but it's not my responsibility." A pause. "You have 24 hours to collect your belongings before I have them removed from the property." "Removed to where?" "That's not my concern." His voice took on a lecturing tone, like I was a child who needed things explained slowly. "Look, Charlotte, I know you're upset. But maybe if you'd focused more on building a real career instead of playing nurse to old people, you wouldn't be in this situation. You made choices. Now you have to live with them. Playing nurse. 2 years of night shifts. 2 years of holding Mom's hand through chemo appointments. 2 years of cleaning up vomit and changing sheets and singing her the songs she used to sing to me when I was small. 2 years of watching her fight and suffer and survive the cancer, only to lose her to a truck driver who fell asleep on May 95. Playing nurse." "I see," I said quietly. "Good. I'm glad we understand each other. 24 hours, Charlotte. After that, anything left behind becomes my property." The line went dead. I stood there in the wet grass next to my boxes of belongings, and I didn't cry. I was too tired to cry. Too empty. Instead, I did what nurses do. I assessed the situation and made a plan. I called Sophie. Sophie showed up 18 minutes later in her beat-up Honda, took one look at me and the boxes and Vanessa visible through the lit windows and said, "Get in. We'll deal with your stuff later." "I can't just leave everything." "Yes, you can. And you will. Because whatever's in those boxes isn't worth hypothermia." She popped her trunk. "Help me load what we can fit. The rest can wait until tomorrow when you have backup." We worked in silence, loading boxes into her car. The wet ones we left because what was the point? When we finished, I took one more look at the house. My house. The house where Mom had planted lavender in the garden every spring. The house where she'd made Sunday dinners and told me stories and held me when I cried. Vanessa was still visible in the living room, phone to her ear, laughing at something. "Come on," Sophie said gently, touching my arm. "Let's go." Her apartment was small, a 2-bedroom in a complex near the hospital that had seen better decades. But it was warm and dry. And when she handed me a cup of tea and a blanket and told me to sit on the couch, I felt something in my chest finally unclench. "Do you want to talk about it?" she asked. I shook my head. "Not yet. There's something I need to read first." The box I'd grabbed, one of the dry ones, sat on Sophie's coffee table. It was labeled Mom's Things, in my own handwriting from 2 years ago, when I'd started organizing her belongings during her first round of chemo. Inside were things Alexander must have assumed were junk. Mom's gardening gloves, worn soft from years of tending her lavender. A few photographs of her as a young woman, before she met Dad. A book of poetry she'd loved. And at the bottom, a cream-colored envelope with my name written in her shaky handwriting. "For Charlotte, when the time comes." I knew this handwriting. These were the letters she'd formed during chemo, when her hands trembled from the medication. I'd watched her try to write Christmas cards last year, watched her get frustrated when the pen wouldn't cooperate. She'd written this while she was sick. She'd known this would happen. My hands shook as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter, written on expensive stationery, the kind Mom kept in her desk drawer for important things, and beneath it, a business card. Evelyn Martinez, Estate Attorney Harrison and Cole Hartford, Connecticut. I set the card aside and unfolded the letter. The handwriting was worse than I remembered. She must have written this during one of the bad weeks, when everything was harder. My dearest Charlotte, if you're reading this, then what I feared has happened. Your brother has shown you exactly who he is. I want you to know. I saw it. I always saw it. I couldn't change your father. God knows I tried. But I could protect you. 5 years ago, when you graduated from nursing school and William said girls don't need expensive educations, I made a decision. I went to see Evelyn Martinez. We started planning. Every month when I told your father I was going to doctor appointments, I was meeting with Evelyn. Every time William gave Alexander money for his business, I was putting money away for you. Every time he told you that you weren't enough, I was adding another document to your file. I know you're hurting right now. I know Alexander has probably taken the house. Probably thrown you out. Probably made you feel like you're nothing. But baby, you're not nothing. You never were. Contact Evelyn. She has everything you need. All the papers, all the arrangements, everything I couldn't give you while I was alive. You are not a burden. You never were. You are the best thing I ever did. I love you more than lavender and all good things. Mom P.S. Don't trust Alexander. Ask Evelyn about the questions I had her investigate. Ask her about the DNA records. Ask her why your father believed something that was never true. I read it 3 times before the words made sense. 5 years. She'd been planning this for 5 years. All those doctor appointments. All those afternoons when she'd asked me to drive her to Hartford and wait in the car. I'd thought she was dealing with medical bills, insurance paperwork, things too depressing to involve me in. She'd been building me a future. Charlotte? Sophie's voice seemed to come from far away. What does it say? I handed her the letter. Couldn't speak. Sophie read it silently, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding to something like awe. When she finished, she looked at the business card, then back at me. Your mom was a badass, she whispered. A sound came out of me that might have been a laugh or might have been a sob. I wasn't sure which. She never said anything, I managed. Not once in 5 years. She let me think that you were alone, Sophie finished quietly. But you weren't. You never were. I picked up the business card, ran my thumb over the embossed letters. Evelyn Martinez, estate attorney. It's almost 8, Sophie said, glancing at the clock. Too late to call tonight, but first thing tomorrow. No. I grabbed my phone. Now. I'm calling now. The number went to voicemail. Expected at 8 p.m. on a Wednesday, but the recording said, You've reached Evelyn Martinez at Harrison and Cole. If this is an urgent estate matter regarding the Carter family, please press 1 to be connected to my personal line. Regarding the Carter family. She'd been waiting for my call. I pressed 1. The line rang twice before a woman answered. Not a receptionist. Her. Charlotte Carter? Her voice was warm, professional, with an edge of something that might have been relief. I've been waiting for you to call. My breath caught. You've been... What? Your mother left very specific instructions. If you didn't contact me within 1 week of her death, I was to reach out to you. But I had a feeling you'd find the letter sooner than that. A pause, and her voice softened. I'm very sorry for your loss, Charlotte. Your mother was an exceptional woman. You knew her. I knew her for 5 years. We met monthly, sometimes more often when things got complicated. Evelyn's voice was steady, grounding. I imagine you have questions. I don't even know what questions to ask. Then let me tell you what happens next. There's a formal will reading scheduled for next week, 4 weeks after your parents' death, as required by Connecticut probate law. Both your parents' wills need to be read together. Alexander has already been notified and has confirmed his attendance. I'd like you to be there. I don't understand. If Dad left everything to Alexander? Your father's will represents only a portion of your parents' combined estate, Evelyn said carefully. Your mother's estate is separate and substantially different. The room seemed to tilt. Different how? That's something I'd prefer to discuss in person, with all parties present. But Charlotte, I need you to trust me until then. Can you do that? I looked at Sophie, who was watching me with wide eyes. I looked at Mom's letter on the coffee table, at her shaky handwriting forming words of protection. 5 years of planning. 5 years of secret meetings. 5 years of building something I knew nothing about. Whatever Alexander says, Evelyn continued, whatever he threatens, don't react. Don't sign anything. Don't make any agreements. Just wait. Can you do that for me? For your mother? I thought about the letter, about playing nurse, about Vanessa's smile through the window. I thought about my mother, who I'd thought was just surviving, actually preparing. Yes, I said. I can wait. Good. I could hear the approval in her voice. The reading is scheduled for next Thursday at 2 p.m. Harrison and Cole, downtown Hartford. The brownstone on Asylum Street. Can you be there? I'll be there. Excellent. And Charlotte, your mother wanted me to tell you something if you called tonight. A pause. She said to tell you that lavender takes time to grow, but once it blooms, nothing can kill it. The line went dead. I sat there holding the phone, Sophie staring at me, Mom's letter on the coffee table between us. What did she say? Sophie asked. She said Mom's estate is separate from Dad's. She said it's different. Substantially different. What does that mean? I don't know. I picked up the letter again, reread the postscript about DNA records and things that were never true. But I think it means Mom knew things she never told anyone. Things about Alexander. Things about Dad. Outside, the rain had started again, tapping against the windows of Sophie's small apartment. I thought about Vanessa in my house, drinking wine. About Alexander changing the locks before our parents were even cold. About 27 years of being told I didn't matter because I wasn't born male. And I thought about my mother, meeting with a lawyer every month for 5 years, building something in secret, protecting me in the only way she knew how. What do I do until Thursday? I asked. Sophie smiled, fierce and protective. You wait, and you let him think he's won. The call came 3 days before the will reading, at 10 o'clock on a Monday night. I was sitting in Sophie's spare bedroom, my bedroom now, I supposed, trying to study for my nursing recertification exam, and failing to absorb anything. When Alexander's name lit up my phone screen, my stomach dropped. Sophie appeared in the doorway. She'd heard the ringtone. Don't answer it. I have to. You really don't. Evelyn said not to engage. But I did. Because whatever Alexander wanted, it was better to know than to wonder. I answered. Alexander. Charlotte. His voice was different, friendly, almost warm, which was somehow worse than hostile. I've been thinking about our situation, about us being at odds like this. It's not good for anyone, is it? I waited, saying nothing. I know I could have handled things better, he continued, and I could picture him rehearsing this in the mirror. The timing, the way I went about moving your things. You're right to be upset. I was insensitive. The apology sounded practiced. I imagined Vanessa coaching him, telling him what to say to make this problem go away. I want to make this right, he he said. I've drawn up a simple agreement. You sign away any claim to contest the estate, acknowledge that the will is clear, and in exchange, I'll give you $15,000 cash. Clean break, no hard feelings. More than enough to get yourself settled somewhere nice. $15,000 for the house I grew up in. For 2 years of caring for Mom while he visited 3 times. For every dismissal, every slight, every moment, Dad and his golden son made me feel like I was taking up space that should have belonged to someone worthier. No, I said. Silence on the other end. Then, Charlotte, be reasonable. You're not going to win anything in probate. Dad's will is crystal clear. All you'll do is spend money on lawyers and drag this out for months. Take the money. Start fresh. I said no, Alexander. His voice hardened instantly, the friendly mask dropping. You're making a mistake. You know that, right? A huge mistake. That's my choice to make. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you don't have any choices. You don't have a home. You don't have family support. You're a 27-year-old nurse living in someone's spare bedroom, and you're about to go up against a will that's been in place for years. He paused, and I could hear him breathing hard. I'm trying to help you avoid embarrassment, Charlotte. I'm trying to give you a way out with some dignity. Dignity. From the man who'd thrown my belongings out in the rain. I'll see you at the will reading, Alexander. Fine. He practically spat the word. But remember this conversation when you walk out of that room with nothing. Remember that I tried to be generous. What happens next is on you. The line went dead. I set the phone down with shaking hands. Sophie was still in the doorway, arms crossed. What did he want? He offered me $15,000 to sign away any contest rights. $15,000? She let out a low whistle. He's scared. Or he's trying to buy me off cheap. No. Sophie came in and sat on the edge of the bed. Someone who's confident doesn't make offers. They wait for the will reading and let the paperwork speak for itself. She pulled out her phone. What's his company called again? Carter Properties. Why? Her fingers flew across her screen. After a moment, her eyebrows shot up. Oh, wow. What? She turned her phone around. On the screen was a news article from 3 months ago. Local developer faces foreclosure on multiple properties. I scanned the article. Alexander's name appeared multiple times. So did phrases like significant investment losses, and mounting debt, and creditor pressure. Keep reading, Sophie said. Another article, from 2 months ago. Carter Properties' $800,000 investment loss raises concerns. And another, from just last month. Hartford developer defaults on commercial loan. I looked up at Sophie. He's broke. Not just broke, drowning. She took her phone back, scrolled some more. Look at Vanessa's Instagram. I pulled it up on my own phone. Vanessa's feed, usually full of designer bags and restaurant check-ins and photos of their house, had changed. The recent posts were all about minimalism and finding joy in simplicity and the benefits of downsizing. Code 4, we can't afford our lifestyle anymore. He doesn't just want the house, I said slowly, understanding dawning. He needs it. He's counting on Dad's estate to save him. Which means, Sophie said, he's probably already told creditors he's getting an inheritance. Probably already made promises based on money he thought was coming. I thought about Alexander's desperation on the phone. About Vanessa's smile through the window. About the way they'd both been watching me at the funeral, calculating. They weren't just greedy. They were desperate. And desperate people do terrible things. Evelyn told me not to react, I said, picking up Mom's letter from where I kept it on the nightstand. Not to sign anything, just to wait. Then that's what you do. Sophie squeezed my shoulder. Thursday is 3 days away. You can wait 3 days. I reread the postscript of Mom's letter for the 100th time. Ask her about the DNA records. Ask her why your father believed something that was never true. Sophie, I said quietly, what if it's not just about money? What if Mom found out something about Alexander? Something that changes everything. Like what? I don't know, but that postscript, Mom didn't write things she didn't mean. She was trying to tell me something important. We sat there in silence, the weight of Thursday's appointment hanging over us. 3 days. 3 days until I walked into Evelyn Martinez's office and found out what my mother had spent 5 years building. 3 days until Alexander discovered that the inheritance he'd counted on, the money he'd already spent in his mind, might not be his at all. 3 days until everything changed. Outside Sophie's window, I could see a streetlight illuminating the parking lot. Rain had started again. It had rained every day since the funeral, like the sky itself was grieving. I thought about Mom's lavender garden at the house. The plants would be dormant now, waiting for spring. But come April, they'd bloom again, purple and fragrant and unstoppable. Lavender takes time to grow, but once it blooms, nothing can kill it. 3 days, I whispered. Sophie nodded. 3 days. I woke up on Thursday morning with my mother's letter clutched in my hand. I didn't remember falling asleep with it, but there it was. Cream-colored paper crinkled from my grip, the ink slightly smudged where my thumb had traced over her words 1,000 times in the past 3 weeks. You are not a burden. You never were. Sophie knocked softly on my door. You awake? Yeah. She came in with coffee, already dressed for work. Big day. Big day, I echoed, but my voice came out flat. Hey. She sat on the edge of my bed. Whatever happens in that room today, you're going to be okay. You know that, right? I didn't know that. I didn't know anything anymore. For 3 weeks, I'd been living in Sophie's spare bedroom, working my shifts at Maplewood, existing in this strange limbo where my entire life felt like it was holding its breath. Waiting for 2 p.m. on a Thursday in March to either validate everything I'd hoped or confirm everything I'd feared. What if it's nothing? I asked quietly. What if all of this, the letter, the mystery, Mom's planning, what if it doesn't matter? What if Dad's will is ironclad and I walk out of there with nothing? Sophie took the letter from my hand, smoothed it out, read it again even though she'd memorized it by now. Your mom spent 5 years on this, Charlotte. 5 years of secret meetings. 5 years of building something. She handed the letter back. Women like your mother don't waste 5 years on nothing. Harrison and Cole occupied a brownstone on Asylum Street that looked like it had been there since Connecticut was still a colony. Brass nameplate, ivy climbing the brick, tall windows that probably cost more to heat than my entire month's rent. I arrived at 1:45 p.m., 15 minutes early. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open the door. The lobby was all dark wood and leather furniture and the kind of quiet that money buys. A receptionist who looked like she stepped out of a fashion magazine smiled at me. Charlotte Carter? Yes. Ms. Martinez is expecting you. Conference room A, 2nd floor. The elevator is just... I'll take the stairs. I needed the extra minute, needed to breathe. The staircase was narrow, the carpet thick enough to muffle sound. With each step, I felt the weight of the past 3 weeks pressing down. The funeral, the locks, the boxes in the rain. Alexander's phone call offering me $15,000 like I was a problem to be solved with petty cash. Whatever happens, don't react. Don't sign anything. Just wait. The conference room door was open. Inside, I could see a long mahogany table, afternoon light slanting through tall windows. And sitting at the head of the table, looking at documents, was a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She looked up as I hesitated in the doorway. Charlotte. Her smile was warm, genuine. Please, come in. I'm Evelyn Martinez. She stood, came around the table, shook my hand. Her grip was firm, steady. The kind of handshake that said, I've got this. You can trust me. Your mother spoke about you often, she said. She was very proud of you. My throat tightened. She never told me about you. I know. That was necessary. Evelyn gestured to a chair. Please sit. We have about 10 minutes before the others arrive. I want to prepare you for what's going to happen. I sat. The leather chair was expensive, comfortable. Everything in this room spoke of money and power and the kind of legal expertise that didn't come cheap. How much did this cost her? I asked suddenly. 5 years of meetings, all this planning. How much did Mom spend? Evelyn's expression softened. My retainer was $20,000, but Charlotte, your mother didn't see it as spending. She saw it as investing. In you. In justice. $20,000. Money Mom had hidden from Dad for 5 years while he handed Alexander $200,000 like it was nothing. What am I walking into? I asked. Evelyn sat across from me, folded her hands on the table. The truth. Finally. After 27 years of your father believing a lie, after 17 years of him making decisions based on that lie, today the truth comes out. The DNA records Mom mentioned in her letter. Yes. Alexander isn't Dad's biological son. No. Evelyn's eyes were steady on mine. But it's more complicated than that. Your father believed Alexander was blood family. He was told something years ago that shaped everything he did, every choice he made. Every time he favored Alexander over you, it was because he thought he was protecting a bloodline. But he was wrong. He was lied to. Evelyn pulled a folder from her briefcase. Your mother spent 5 years uncovering that lie, and she spent 5 years making sure you wouldn't pay the price for it. Before I could ask more, voices echoed in the hallway. Evelyn's expression shifted into professional neutrality. They're here. Remember, whatever happens, whatever is said, I need you to stay calm. Your mother planned every detail of this. Trust her plan. The door opened. Alexander walked in first. David Park, his attorney, right behind him. Alexander wore another expensive suit. Another Rolex. But up close, I could see the strain around his eyes. The weight he'd lost. The way his jaw was clenched so tight it must have hurt. Then Vanessa appeared, and my breath caught. She looked terrible. Not Instagram perfect anymore. Makeup couldn't quite hide the dark circles under her eyes. Her designer bag was last season's. The Chanel suit she wore I'd seen in photos from 2 years ago. They were broke. Really, truly broke. And they'd been counting on this inheritance to save them. Charlotte. Alexander's voice was tight. I'm surprised you actually showed up. Why wouldn't I? I thought after our last conversation you'd realize this was pointless. He took a seat across from me, David Park beside him. Vanessa sat at the far end, phone out, pretending not to listen. Mr. Carter? Evelyn's voice cut through the tension. Thank you for coming. I believe we're still waiting for one more person. Who? Alexander frowned. Dad's will was clear. It's just family and lawyers. Your grandmother, Evelyn said. Dorothy Morgan. She's listed as a party of interest in your mother's estate. The door opened again. Grandma Dorothy walked in. And I'd never been so happy to see anyone in my life. She moved slowly, leaning on her cane, but her eyes were sharp as ever. Behind her came Grace Thompson, her longtime companion and caregiver. Dorothy, Alexander said, and I could hear the confusion in his voice. What are you doing here? Your mother asked me to be here, Alexander. Grandma took the seat next to me, patted my hand, said it was important. Her presence shifted something in the room, made it feel less like I was alone against Alexander and more like I had family, real family. Evelyn stood. Now that everyone's here, let's begin. We'll be reading 2 wills today. William Carter's will and Elizabeth Carter's will. They are separate documents with separate provisions. Separate? Alexander leaned forward. Why does that matter? Everything was jointly owned. Not everything, Evelyn said quietly. As it turns out, she opened the first folder. Last will and testament of William Carter, dated 2 years ago, witnessed and notarized in Hartford County, Connecticut. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Evelyn read through the standard provisions: executor appointments, debt payments, funeral instructions. Then she reached the distribution of assets. To my son, Alexander Robert Carter, I leave 60% of my personal assets, including my vehicle, my workshop tools and equipment, and my share of all financial accounts. Alexander nodded slowly. 60%. Not the 90 he'd probably wanted, but substantial. To my daughter, Charlotte Marie Carter, I leave 40% of my remaining personal assets. I blinked. 40%? I'd expected token amounts. 10% maybe. Something to avoid looking completely heartless but small enough to make the point. 40%. Alexander's voice had taken on that magnanimous tone, the one that meant he thought he was being generous. Dad's accounts totaled approximately $120,000. After estate costs and debts, you'll get about $48,000, Charlotte. More than I expected him to leave you, honestly. He smiled at me like he was doing me a favor. David Park was making notes, nodding. The will was exactly what they'd expected. Clean, clear, no surprises. Grandma Dorothy's grip on my hand tightened, but she said nothing. However, Evelyn continued, and something in her tone made Alexander's smile falter. William Carter's will represents only a portion of your parents' combined estate. She closed the first folder, opened the second. We now turn to the last will and testament of Elizabeth Morgan Carter. The room went very still. Wait. Alexander sat forward. Mom's will? Why does Mom need a separate will? She didn't have anything. She was a housewife. Everything came from Dad. That's incorrect, Mr. Carter. Evelyn's eyes were cool. Your mother had significant assets in her own name. Assets that were never your father's. Assets she was free to distribute as she saw fit. What assets? Vanessa had put down her phone, was staring at Evelyn. Elizabeth didn't work. She didn't have income. She had family money, Grandma Dorothy said quietly. From my side. Money that was hers alone. Alexander's face had gone pale. How much family money? Quite a bit, Evelyn said. But before we discuss distribution, your mother left a letter she specifically requested I read aloud to all present. She lifted a single page. Cream-colored stationery, the expensive kind. Mom's handwriting. Shaky but deliberate. And as Evelyn began to read, I felt the room tilt. To those I love, Evelyn read, her voice clear and steady. If you are hearing this letter, then I am gone, and the moment I have been preparing for has arrived. I want you to know that I loved you all, even knowing what I knew, even understanding what had to be done. William, my husband of 34 years, I loved you even when you couldn't see our daughter, even when you made choices that broke my heart. I know you thought you were doing right. I know you believed you were protecting a legacy. But my darling, you were protecting a lie. Alexander, you are not to blame for any of this. You were a child when it all began. A baby who needed a home. You couldn't have known. But I need you to understand why I made the choices I did. And Charlotte, my brave girl, my heart, this is for you. All of it. Every decision, every secret meeting, every document I signed. I did it because you deserved better than the scraps of love your father could spare. You deserved to know that someone saw you. Someone valued you. Someone loved you more than tradition, more than bloodlines, more than lies. Evelyn paused, let the words sink in. Alexander's face had gone from pale to ashen. 17 years ago, she continued reading. William's father, your grandfather, told William something on his deathbed. He confessed to an affair with a woman named Margaret Morrison. He claimed that Alexander, the baby William and I had adopted 4 years earlier, was actually his biological grandson, his flesh and blood, a Carter by birth, not just by law. William believed him. How could he not? A dying man's confession, his own father. And from that moment forward, everything changed. William began to see Alexander not as our adopted son, but as the carrier of the Carter bloodline, the true heir, the one who mattered. And Charlotte, our biological daughter, our miracle baby, became secondary, became less, because she was just a girl, because she couldn't carry the precious Carter name into the next generation. For 17 years, I watched my husband favor Alexander because he thought he was protecting family blood. For 17 years, I watched Charlotte try so hard to earn love that should have been freely given. And for 5 years, I've known the truth that William died never knowing. Evelyn looked up. Alexander was gripping the edge of the table, knuckles white. 5 years ago, she read, I found my father-in-law's letter in our attic. The one where he explained about Margaret Morrison, about the affair, about Alexander being his biological son. I found the cassette tape where he recorded the same story, wanting to make sure William understood. I also found adoption records, medical histories, details William never thought to check, and I realized something was wrong. So I hired an investigator. I found Margaret Morrison in Boston, and I learned the truth. Margaret Morrison lied. She told William's parents that their employer, Carter Sr., was the father of her baby. She told them what they wanted to hear, what they needed to hear to pay for her silence, to take the baby, to give her the money she needed to start over. But it wasn't true. Alexander is not William's nephew. He is not a Carter by blood. He is simply the son we chose to adopt, the son we loved. But he is not, and never was, the bloodline William thought he was protecting. I had DNA testing done. Tissue samples from the funeral home, from Alexander's medical records. Everything legal, everything documented. The results are in the sealed envelope Evelyn will provide. Alexander has 0% DNA match with William's father. 0. My husband spent 17 years favoring an adopted son over our biological daughter because he believed a lie. A lie I discovered. A lie I could have told him. But I didn't. Because William would have been destroyed. Because Alexander would have been destroyed. Because revealing the truth would have hurt everyone and helped no one. So instead, I protected Charlotte the only way I could. I built her a future that William couldn't take away. I built her a legacy that wasn't based on lies or bloodlines or being born male. I built her justice. The letter ended there. The silence in the room was absolute. Alexander was staring at Evelyn like she'd spoken in a foreign language. Vanessa had gone completely still, her phone forgotten on the table. No, Alexander said finally. No, that's not... Dad would have known. He would have checked. He wouldn't have just believed. Your father believed his father, Evelyn said quietly. And by the time your mother discovered the truth, revealing it would have caused more harm than good. So she chose a different path. She chose to protect Charlotte without destroying you. Let me see the DNA results, Alexander's voice was shaking. I want to see proof. Evelyn slid a sealed envelope across the table. Medical letterhead, laboratory stamps, official seals. Alexander opened it with trembling hands. Read again. Then he just sat there, staring at the paper. I'm not. His voice was barely a whisper. I'm not even related to him. All these years, all the talk about legacy and bloodline and being a Carter, it was all based on a lie your grandfather told, Evelyn finished. A lie Margaret Morrison created. A lie that shaped your entire life. And Dad never knew? He died believing you were his blood nephew. Believing he was honoring his father's wishes. Believing the Carter legacy was safe. Evelyn's voice was gentle despite the devastating words. Your mother made the choice to let him believe that. To protect both of you from a truth that would have destroyed your relationship with your father. Alexander looked at me then, and for the first time in my life, I saw something other than confidence in his eyes. I saw devastation. You knew, he said. You knew before today. I knew Mom had a secret, I said quietly. I didn't know what it was until just now. But you're not surprised. No, I'm not. I met his gaze steadily, because Mom told me to trust her. And unlike you, I actually listened when she spoke. Vanessa stood abruptly. This is insane. Even if all this is true, even if Alexander isn't... She couldn't finish the sentence. It doesn't matter. William's will is clear. Adoption or not, blood or not, Alexander is still the son. He still gets the inheritance. From William's estate, yes, Evelyn agreed. 60% of approximately $120,000, minus legal fees and estate costs. About $70,000. She paused, let that number sink in. However, she continued, we still need to discuss Elizabeth's will, and her estate is considerably more substantial. Alexander looked up. How much more? Evelyn opened a new folder. Let's start with the house. The property at 127 Maple Drive, Evelyn said, pulling out a document, was transferred into Elizabeth Carter's sole name 5 years ago. What? Alexander jerked forward. The house was Dad's. It was always Dad's. It was jointly owned, Evelyn corrected. Until 5 years ago, when your parents executed a deed transfer. The stated reason was liability protection. William's contracting business had been named in a potential lawsuit, and moving the house into Elizabeth's sole name would protect it from any judgments. She slid the document across the table. Official county seal, notary stamp, both signatures clear at the bottom. The lawsuit was settled, Evelyn continued, but the deed transfer remained. William assumed, incorrectly, that the house would be transferred back to joint ownership. It never was. The property, currently valued at $580,000, belonged solely to Elizabeth Carter at the time of her death. I watched the color drain from Alexander's face. But that means... Vanessa couldn't finish. It means, Evelyn said, looking at me, that Elizabeth had full legal authority to leave the house to whomever she chose. And she chose Charlotte. The house where I'd grown up. The house where Mom had planted lavender every spring and made Sunday dinners and held me when I cried. The house Alexander had thrown me out of 3 weeks ago. It had been mine all along. This is a mistake. Alexander was shaking his head. Dad said, he promised. Your father promised what he thought he had. Evelyn said. He believed he owned the house. He didn't. Not for the past 5 years. Can he contest this? Vanessa asked David Park sharply. There has to be a way to. The deed transfer is legal and properly recorded, David said quietly, looking at the document. If William signed it willingly, which it appears he did, there's no grounds for contest. The house belongs to Charlotte. $580,000. But it wasn't about the money. It was about Mom, taking something that should have been mine anyway and making sure I got it. Making sure Alexander couldn't take it away. "There's more," Evelyn said. "More?" Alexander's voice was hollow. "What else could there possibly be?" 5 years ago, Elizabeth established an irrevocable trust with Charlotte as the sole beneficiary. Evelyn produced another document, this one thick with legal language. An irrevocable trust, once established, cannot be modified or dissolved without the beneficiary's consent. It exists entirely outside of probate. "A trust." Vanessa's voice had gone flat. "How much?" The trust was initially funded with a $450,000 gift from Dorothy Morgan, Elizabeth's mother. Elizabeth invested those funds conservatively over 5 years in index funds and treasury bonds. The current value, she consulted her notes, is approximately $820,000. The number hung in the air like a bomb that hadn't exploded yet. $820,000. Mom had taken Grandma's help and turned it into almost $1 million. For me, while working within a marriage where she couldn't have her own bank account without Dad knowing. "And finally," Evelyn said, "there is the matter of Elizabeth's life insurance policy with Northwestern Mutual. The death benefit is $330,000, with Charlotte named as the sole beneficiary." She stacked all the documents neatly in front of her. To summarize, from her father's estate, Charlotte receives 40% of his liquid assets, approximately $48,000. From her mother's estate, the house at 127 Maple Drive, valued at $580,000. The irrevocable trust, currently valued at $820,000. And life insurance proceeds of $330,000. Evelyn looked directly at me. Total inheritance, approximately $1,778,000. The room spun. $1.7 million. My mother, who wore the same Timex watch for 20 years and grew her own vegetables and never bought anything she didn't need, had built me a fortune while I thought I was barely scraping by. "This is fraud." Alexander stood so abruptly his chair fell backward. "This has to be fraud. Mom didn't have that kind of money. She couldn't have—" "Every dollar is documented and legal," Evelyn said calmly. "The gift from Dorothy Morgan was properly reported. The trust was legally established. The deed transfer was notarized and recorded. The life insurance policy has been in place for 3 years. Your mother broke no laws, Mr. Carter. She simply planned carefully." "But Dad didn't know." Alexander's voice rose. "He would never have allowed—" "Your father's knowledge is irrelevant," Evelyn cut in. "The assets in question were never his. The house became your mother's property when he signed that deed. The trust was funded with money your grandmother gave directly to your mother. The insurance policy was paid for with money from that same trust. William had no legal claim to any of it." Alexander turned to Grandma Dorothy, betrayal written across his face. "You knew. You were part of this." "I was," Dorothy said, unashamed. "Elizabeth was my daughter. Charlotte is my granddaughter. When Elizabeth came to me 5 years ago and told me what William was planning, told me how he was going to cut Charlotte out because she wasn't the blood heir he thought you were. Yes, I helped. I would do it again. But we're family," Alexander said, and something in his voice broke. "I'm your grandson, too. How could you just—" "You are my grandson," Dorothy said firmly. "And I love you, Alexander. But love doesn't make me blind. For 17 years, I watched William favor you because of a lie. For 17 years, I watched Charlotte try so hard to earn attention that should have been freely given. I couldn't change William's mind, but I could help Elizabeth protect our girl." "Protect her from what? From me?" Alexander laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I never wanted to hurt Charlotte. You threw her belongings out in the rain 2 days after her parents' funeral. Evelyn said, her voice hard now. You changed the locks on the house she grew up in before her mother was even cold in the ground. You offered her $15,000 to go away quietly. Don't pretend you were protecting anyone but yourself. Alexander flinched like he'd been slapped. Vanessa had her head in her hands. I could see her shoulders shaking. Crying or laughing, I couldn't tell. How much do we get? She asked, voice muffled. From Elizabeth's estate. How much? Nothing, Evelyn said simply. Elizabeth's will leaves her personal effects, photograph albums, and jewelry collection to Alexander, along with a letter written specifically for him. The monetary value of those items is negligible. Nothing. Vanessa looked up, mascara running, face twisted. We get nothing. After everything we borrowed $600,000, Alexander. You said the inheritance was guaranteed. You said your father promised. He did promise, Alexander whispered. He always said sons inherit. He always said. He promised based on a lie. Vanessa stood, grabbed her purse. I'm done. I'm done with this family and your precious Carter legacy and all of it. I want a divorce. Vanessa, don't. She held up a hand. I gave up my career for you. I gave up everything because you said we'd be fine. Because you said Daddy's money would save us. Well, guess what, Alexander? There is no Daddy's money. There's just debt and lies and you figuring out how to pay back $600,000 on your own. She walked out. The door slammed behind her. The silence that followed was suffocating. Alexander sank back into his chair, head in his hands. David Park was quietly packing up his briefcase, clearly wanting to be anywhere else. There is one more thing, Evelyn said quietly. Jesus Christ, what now? Alexander's voice was muffled. Your mother left a second letter. This one is for you privately, but she requested that certain elements be read aloud in this forum. She pulled out another envelope, opened it, read silently for a moment, then, Alexander, I know you are angry. I know this feels like betrayal, but I want you to understand something. I love you. I have always loved you. From the moment we brought you home, you were my son. Adoption didn't make you less. It made you chosen. But somewhere along the way, you forgot that being chosen was a gift. You began to believe you deserved everything because of who you were, rather than being grateful for what you were given. You were given a family, a home. A father who loved you so much he believed a lie rather than accept you might not be blood. Charlotte was given nothing but dismissal and doubt. And yet she stayed. She cared for me through cancer. She worked night shifts and lived on scraps and never once complained. You do not have money because you did not earn it, Alexander. But more importantly, you do not have it because you need to learn what Charlotte already knows. Worth is not inherited. It is built through choices and sacrifices and showing up when no one is watching. I am not leaving you destitute. I am leaving you an opportunity to become someone better than the man you have been. Use it wisely. With love, always, Mom. Evelyn folded the letter, placed it in front of Alexander. He didn't touch it. Can I contest this? He asked finally, voice dead. Any of it? David Park shook his head slowly. Every document is airtight. The deed transfer is legal. The trust is irrevocable. The will was executed when your mother was of sound mind. There's even a psychiatric evaluation confirming her competency. You could try, but you'd lose, and it would cost you legal fees you can't afford. So that's it. Alexander looked at me for the first time since the DNA results. You win. You get everything. I didn't want a contest, I said quietly. I just wanted to not be thrown away. Well, congratulations. He stood, swayed slightly. You're not thrown away anymore. You're the rich Carter. The one with the house and the money and the future. Must be nice. He walked toward the door, stopped. "For what it's worth," he said, not turning around. "I really did think I was doing right. I thought I was protecting Dad's legacy. I thought—" His voice broke. "I thought I mattered because of the name. Because of the blood. Because I was chosen for a reason." "You were chosen," Grandma Dorothy said. "You were chosen because two people wanted a child and you needed a family. That should have been enough, Alexander." "Yeah, should have been." He left. David Park followed, murmuring apologies. And then it was just me, Evelyn, Grandma Dorothy, and Grace Thompson in the conference room with the afternoon lights slanting through the windows. "Holy shit," I whispered. Grandma laughed. Actually laughed. That's one way to put it. Evelyn started gathering documents, organizing them into folders for me to take. "You'll need to meet with a financial advisor. I recommend Rebecca Foster. She's excellent with sudden wealth management. There are tax implications, estate settlement procedures, title transfers. We'll need several more meetings to finalize everything." "I own a house," I said, still not quite believing it. "I have almost $2 million. "Your mother made sure of it," Evelyn said gently. "Every month for 5 years she came to this office. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she was angry, but she never wavered. She was absolutely certain this was right." "Can I swallowed hard. "Can I see the video? The one Mom made?" "Of course, I have it on a secured drive. You can watch it whenever you're ready." "Now. I want to watch it now." Evelyn set up her laptop, pulled up the video file, then quietly excused herself to give me privacy. Grandma Dorothy squeezed my hand and left with Grace. And then it was just me and the laptop, and my mother's face filling the screen. She looked so tired. This was filmed 2 years ago, during her second round of chemo. I could tell from the scarf wrapped around her head, from the hollowness in her cheeks. But her eyes were clear, determined. "Hi, baby," she said, and my heart broke all over again. "If you're watching this, then I'm gone. And I'm so sorry I'm not there to see what comes next. But I need you to know why I did what I did. 5 years ago, I found out your father had been living a lie. Not a lie he told. A lie he was told. And that lie shaped everything. Every choice he made. Every time he chose Alexander over you. Every moment you felt invisible. It wasn't your fault, Charlotte. It was never your fault. I couldn't tell him the truth. It would have destroyed him. It would have destroyed Alexander. And in the end, it wouldn't have changed anything. William believed what he believed. The truth would have just made him defensive. So I chose a different path. I chose to build you a future he couldn't take away, to give you security and freedom and the knowledge that someone saw you. Someone valued you. You are not second best, my darling. You were never second best. You were my miracle, my heart. The best thing I ever did. And I know the money is a lot. I know it's overwhelming, but I need you to understand what it represents. It represents every time your father said no to you and yes to Alexander. It represents every moment you felt less than because you were born female. It represents my choice to protect you the only way I could. Use it wisely. Use it kindly. Don't let it change who you are. Use it to become more of who you already are. Help people. Build something beautiful. Live without fear. And please, please forgive Alexander eventually. Not right away. He doesn't deserve that. But someday, when the hurt fades, remember he was raised on lies too. He's a victim of those lies, just like you were. The difference is, You were strong enough to survive without favor. He never learned how. Maybe the gift of losing everything will teach him what you've always known. Worth isn't given. It's built. I love you more than lavender and all good things, Charlotte. Live well. Be happy. And know that every choice I made for you. Always, Mom. The video ended. I sat there in the silent conference room, tears streaming down my face, and felt something shift inside me. Not just grief, not just relief, understanding. Mom had spent 5 years building me armor. 5 years creating a shield against a family that had never quite known how to love me right. 5 years of secret meetings and legal documents and careful planning. All so I could sit in this room and hear the truth and walk out knowing I was protected. I wiped my eyes, closed the laptop, and stood. Through the window, I could see Hartford spreading out below. The city where I'd grown up, where I'd gone to school, where I'd worked night shifts and cared for dying parents and learned that love sometimes looks like silence. And where I was now standing, holding documents that proved I had never, ever been nothing. Evelyn knocked softly on the door. Ready? Yeah. I picked up the folders. I'm ready. There's one more thing. She handed me a small key. Your mother left instructions for a safety deposit box at Hartford Trust Bank. She said you'd know when to open it. I took the key, felt its weight in my palm. One more secret. One more piece of the puzzle. But that could wait. Right now, I just needed to walk out of this building and breathe. Grandma Dorothy was waiting in the lobby with Grace. When she saw my face, she smiled. Well? She did it, I said. Mom actually did it. Of course she did. Dorothy linked her arm through mine. She was my daughter. We Morgan women don't quit. We walked out into the March afternoon, and for the first time in 3 weeks, the sun was shining. Thursday came with weak March sunshine, the first clear day since the funeral. I stood in front of the mirror in Sophie's bathroom, trying to make myself look like someone who belonged in a lawyer's office. Navy dress, borrowed blazer, Mom's old Timex watch on my wrist. She'd worn it every day of her life, even after Dad offered to buy her something nicer. You ready? Sophie asked from the doorway. I don't know. You are. She squeezed my shoulder. Whatever happens in there, you deserve it. Harrison and Cole occupied a brownstone in Hartford's historic district. Brass nameplate, stone steps worn smooth by decades of feet. Through the glass door, I could see Alexander and Vanessa already in the lobby. Alexander was pacing, checking his Rolex. Vanessa sat perfectly still, scrolling her phone. They looked nervous. I pushed open the door. Alexander's head snapped up. Charlotte, glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it. A woman emerged, 50-something, silver-streaked hair, kind but sharp eyes. Ms. Carter? Evelyn Martinez. It's good to finally meet you in person. Her grip was firm, warm. The conference room had a mahogany table for 12. Evelyn sat at the head. Alexander took the seat closest to her, claiming territory. Vanessa beside him. I sat across from them. Then the door opened one more time. Grandma Dorothy walked in, using her cane, Grace Thompson helping her into the chair beside me. Dorothy, Alexander said tightly. I didn't know you were... Your mother asked me to be here, Grandma said simply. She took my hand. So here I am. Evelyn opened a leather folder. Thank you all for coming. We'll be reading 2 wills today, William Carter's will and Elizabeth Carter's will. They are separate documents. 2 wills? Vanessa frowned. Everything was jointly owned. Not everything, Evelyn said quietly. She read through Dad's will. Standard provisions, then the distribution. To my son, Alexander Carter, I leave 60% of my personal assets. Alexander nodded, satisfied. To my daughter, Charlotte Carter, I leave 40% of my remaining personal assets. I blinked. 40%? Dad's liquid assets totaled approximately $120,000, Alexander said. After estate costs, you'll get maybe $48,000, Charlotte. That's more than I expected, honestly. He smiled at me like he was being generous. If I may continue, Evelyn said, and something in her tone made Alexander's smile falter. What's left? He leaned back. The house was Dad's. The money was Dad's. Charlotte gets her consolation prize. Vanessa had pulled out her phone, already calculating. Actually, Evelyn said, her voice cutting through the room, there's quite a bit left to discuss. She closed William's will and opened the second folder. Your mother's estate is separate and considerably larger. The room went very still. Separate? Alexander stood up. Mom didn't have her own estate. She was a housewife. Everything came from Dad. That's not accurate, Mr. Carter. It is accurate. His voice rose. Whatever little savings Mom had doesn't matter. Dad made his wishes clear. The son inherits. Charlotte should be grateful for what she's getting. He turned to me, venom in his voice. This is the embarrassment I tried to spare you. You're hoping Mom left you something meaningful. Her jewelry? Recipe cards? It doesn't change anything. The house is still Dad's, and you're still... Mr. Carter. Evelyn's voice stopped him cold. Sit down. Alexander actually obeyed. Your mother's will contains specific provisions that supersede your assumptions. If you interrupt again, you'll leave. She picked up the second folder. Last Will and Testament of Elizabeth Carter. Updated 18 months ago. The testator was evaluated by a psychiatrist and declared fully competent. She placed a USB drive on the table. I also have video documentation, 34 minutes of your mother explaining every decision, available if anyone wishes to contest. Vanessa stared at the USB drive. Your mother left a letter to be read aloud. Evelyn lifted cream-colored stationery, Mom's special paper. To those I love, she read. If you are hearing this, I am gone and the moment I dreaded has arrived. My throat tightened. I love you all, but love does not make me blind. Alexander went still. For 25 years, I watched William favor Alexander. Sons matter, daughters serve. I couldn't change him. Grandma's grip on my hand tightened. When Charlotte was born, William said, maybe next time we'll have a boy. I held my daughter and promised she would never be maybe next time to me. Tears streamed down my face. I watched Charlotte work twice as hard for half the acknowledgement. I watched her pay her own way through nursing school while Alexander received every advantage. I watched her care for me through the worst 2 years, holding my hand through chemo, singing me songs. Alexander visited 3 times. 3 times in 2 years. Vanessa made a small sound. I write this to explain my choices. The assets I leave Charlotte are not favoritism. They are the balance I could not provide while alive. They are what she was always owed. Evelyn looked up. The letter concludes, Charlotte, you are never a burden. You are my heart. Live well, be happy. With all my love, Mom. I couldn't speak. Now, Evelyn said, let's discuss what your mother left you. She pulled out the first document. First, the house. The house is Dad's estate, Alexander said. Actually, it wasn't. Evelyn slid the paper across. 5 years ago, the property was transferred to Elizabeth Carter's sole name. What? Why would Dad? Liability protection. Your father faced a potential lawsuit. Moving the house into your mother's name protected it. It's common practice. Alexander grabbed the paper, scanning frantically. The property, appraised at $580,000, belonged solely to your mother. Evelyn looked at me. And she left it to you, Charlotte. Vanessa's face went ashen. No. Alexander shook his head. Dad said, your father believed it was temporary, Grandma Dorothy said. Elizabeth never transferred it back. He never checked. Additionally, Evelyn continued, there is an irrevocable trust. What? 5 years ago, your mother established an irrevocable trust with Charlotte as sole beneficiary. Initially funded with $450,000 from Mrs. Morgan. Invested conservatively. Current value, $820,000. Vanessa made a choking sound. This is fraud, Alexander sputtered. Dad didn't know. Your father's knowledge is irrelevant. The trust was legal. You have no claim. There is one final asset. Life insurance, $330,000. Beneficiary, Charlotte Carter. I'm family too, Alexander's voice cracked. I'm her son. She can't leave me nothing. She left you her personal effects, photographs, jewelry, and a letter. A letter. His laugh was broken. Charlotte gets millions. I get a letter. Would you like me to read it? He nodded wordlessly. Evelyn opened another envelope. Dear Alexander, I know you're angry, but I want you to understand something important. Alexander gripped the table. Your grandfather told William on his deathbed that you were his biological grandson, that Margaret Morrison had an affair with him, that you carried Carter blood. The room tilted. William believed this for 17 years. He favored you because he thought you were blood family. He thought he was honoring his father's wish. Alexander stared, perfectly still. But Alexander, it was a lie. Grandma Dorothy stood slowly, pulling a document from her purse. 5 years ago, Elizabeth found your grandfather's deathbed confession. She investigated. She obtained DNA samples legally and had them tested. She slid the paper to Alexander. You share no biological DNA with the Carter family. Margaret Morrison lied, likely to secure better adoption. Your grandfather believed her. William believed him. But it was never true. Alexander stared at the results. You're not a Carter by blood, Dorothy said quietly. You were chosen, adopted, loved, but the bloodline your father obsessed over? Fiction. The silence was suffocating. William spent 17 years favoring you based on a lie, Evelyn said. Elizabeth discovered it 5 years ago. She didn't tell William. It would destroy him. She didn't tell you. It wasn't your fault. But she wouldn't let Charlotte suffer anymore. My whole life, Alexander whispered. Everything I thought I was. What's real is that you were chosen, Grandma said. That should have been enough. Vanessa grabbed her purse and stood. Where are you going? Alexander reached for her. Away from this. You told me the inheritance was guaranteed. I gave up my career. Her voice broke. I married a lie. She walked out. The door clicked shut. Alexander sat alone, everything crumbling. Total figures, Evelyn said gently. Charlotte receives the house, $580,000. Trust, $820,000. Life insurance, $330,000. Plus $48,000 from your father's estate. Total, approximately $1,778,000. $1.7 million. This can't be legal, Alexander said weakly. It's ironclad. You can hire lawyers, but you'll only waste what your father left you. I looked at him, my brother who wasn't my brother, who'd believed a lie, who'd been loved but never knew it was enough. "Alexander," I said quietly. He looked up, hollow. "I'm not going to let you be homeless." Hope flickered. "But I'm not going to bail you out either. You can rebuild your own life. If you want coffee once a month, just to talk, I'm willing. But any relationship between us will take time. A lot of time." I stood up. "Mom left you a letter too," Evelyn said. She handed him an envelope. He read silently, tears streaming. "What does it say?" I asked. His voice broke. "You were chosen, Alexander. That should have been enough. I'm sorry your father made you think it wasn't. Charlotte is my daughter. I won't let her pay for William's mistakes. You were loved. You always were." For the first time since the funeral, I saw my brother as another casualty. "I'm sorry," I said, "that you were lied to. That Dad hurt us both, just in different ways." "You're really not going to help me?" "I'm going to let you help yourself. That's the kindest thing I can do." I walked to the door. Grandma followed. At the threshold, I turned back. "Mom loved you, but she loved me enough to protect me. That's the difference." 2 years later, the Jennifer Carter Foundation opened its doors on Mom's birthday. In 2 years, we'd helped 47 women navigate estate disputes, funded 12 nursing scholarships. I'd finished my NP program, worked at Maplewood and the foundation. The house sold to Sarah, a teacher with 2 daughters who loved the lavender garden. Alexander and I had coffee monthly. Awkward but honest. He worked in sales now, met his birth mother, was rebuilding slowly. Today I drove to Hartford Memorial Gardens one last time. Mom's stone read, Elizabeth Carter, 1970 to 2025. She planted gardens and daughters. I placed fresh lavender from my own garden. The foundation opened today, Mom. We're helping women who were where I was. The wind rustled new leaves. I paid off my loans, bought a house. I have security now. I touched her name. But the money didn't save me. Knowing someone saw me did. That I mattered to you. A car pulled up. Alexander holding wildflowers. "I'm not staying," he said. "Just wanted to bring her something." He placed flowers beside my lavender. "She'd be proud of you," he said quietly. "She'd be proud of you too, for being honest about who you are now." We stood in silence. "Same time next month?" he asked. "Same time." He left. I stayed longer, watching clouds. "I forgave him," I told Mom's grave. "Not because he earned it, because you taught me mercy isn't about deserving." The sun was setting, painting the sky purple and gold. "You didn't give me money, Mom. You gave me permission to believe I was always enough." I walked back to my car, but the lavender on her grave still caught the last light, purple and bright and impossible to miss. Thank you for staying with me through Charlotte's journey. If this story touched you, if you've ever felt invisible or dismissed, please know that you are enough. You always were. If you enjoyed this, please subscribe and share with someone who needs this message. Until next time, remember, lavender takes time to grow, but once it blooms, nothing can kill it.